Well, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are. I want to get this started soon. I'm going to let some of our attendees that are still coming on join on. So I'll give us about another 30 to 45 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, well, welcome to another live demo that Domotz is doing here. I want to go over a few basic items here before we get started. First thing I want to say is that we're using GoToWebinar. I'm sure many of you over the last 6 weeks have become familiar with many different types of online unified communications and broadcasting systems. Seems like that's been our life for a little while. You can listen in two ways, either through the computer audio or you can listen directly on your phone. I do want to say if you're experiencing any audio problems, often try switching back and forth because that will usually resolve any of the issues. I do want to say, please feel free to ask questions during this broadcast. Y'all should be muted at this point, but we definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear what questions you have. If you have questions about the things we're showing, or you have questions about just Domotz in general, feel free to ask them through the questions box on the right-hand side. And then the last thing that I really want to point out is today we're going to be really doing more of just a general demonstration of Domotz and the general functionality that we have. Our team, as I said, is standing by to answer questions. We may not get to all the questions because we have a fairly big audience today. I'm sure many of you are working from home, and so you have a little bit more time on your hands, which frankly, it means you have time to learn and see more about what we're offering. I think that's great. Our guys will try to respond, and if the question is pertinent to something that we're showing right now, I've invited Giancarlo Finelli, our CTO, to interrupt us with that question, and we'll get to it as quickly as possible. I also want to say this is something that we're doing every 2 weeks. I wouldn't expect everybody to be on there every 2 weeks, but if you'd like to give us some general feedback about what we're showing, how we're showing it, maybe some things that we could do better that might help, please leave those comments as well in the questions box, and we certainly appreciate it. So with that, let me end this slideshow and let's get started with our service here. So some feedback that we did get before was really that people were having a hard time seeing our screen. So I have blown up the Domotz agent here so that it takes up the full screen. Hopefully it gives you a little bit better visibility into what we're seeing. But let's go through that. So the first thing that I want to mention is, what is Domotz? Domotz is a remote monitoring and management solution that really caters towards the IoT side of the network. And when we say IoT, it's an overly used term, but Internet of Things. The idea is, how can we give you as a service provider or as an integrator visibility into what's being placed onto the networks that you are monitoring and managing? There are many traditional RMM tools out there that really do what we call endpoint monitoring, monitoring of PCs, laptops, servers, making sure that the antivirus is up to date, making sure that people are on standard versions of Windows or Linux or whatever it may be. What we do is something very different. We move away from the PCs, laptops, and servers, and we're showing you information about the network itself, the network infrastructure, so the switches, the routers, the firewalls, the wireless access points. We're also showing you all of the information or all the other devices that are connected to the network that may be affecting your network. And what we're trying to do with this is make you and your business a little bit more efficient. The idea is that we want to improve your operational efficiency. How can we help you eliminate truck rolls? How can we help you know what's on that network so that if there are issues going on that you can deal with those in a very productive way. The second thing that we really do here is provide you a way to do what we call proactive monitoring. We feel that a lot of managed service providers and integrators are stuck in this break fix world where they will go off, do an installation, and then they wait for that phone call. I would say the dreaded phone call from their clients that says something is wrong. And then whatever they do, they either log into that system, they issue a truck roll, but they go out and fix it. When you are in that break fix type of model, it really is not as effective as what it should be. And the second thing is, it really doesn't provide the customer service that I think people are coming to expect nowadays. So what we want to do is provide more of a tool for proactive monitoring, getting away from that break fix, and really ultimately improving your customer service. That fundamentally is what Domotz is about. So let's talk a little bit about how it works. The screen that you see here is really a NOC-like interface. And when I say NOC, I do mean Network Operations Center type of view. It's a very multi-tenant view. So as you deploy what we call agents that are out there, network-based agent, there's a single network agent for every site that you are monitoring. Those agents show up here as little dots, red, yellow, and green type of colors. When a dot is red, it really means that the network agent is no longer communicating with our servers. It's not, it could be because of power outage. It could be because the ISP itself is down. It could simply because somebody unplugged a cable that they shouldn't have. But the agent itself is no longer communicating with our cloud-based services. When it's green, typically means everything is kosher and running well. But when it comes to yellow, that's when things really start to get interesting. Typically means that important devices that you have classified or that Domotz has classified on the network are down, such as network infrastructure devices, or it could be because we see security vulnerabilities on the network. I mentioned this, but I'll say it again, Domotz really is a cloud-based service. There are three major portions to how Domotz works. There is the network agent itself that I talked about that's sitting on that network. There is the cloud, which our Domotz cloud servers are running on Amazon Web Services. A lot of people ask that, but we found them to be very quick, reliable, and work really well for throughout the world. And then there's also what we call the application. The thing that you're looking at, the screen right now that you're looking at, it fundamentally is an application. In fact, I'm showing you guys the Domotz desktop application, but we also have a web-based app. And then I should also point out that we have a mobile app. So a lot of you are often traveling, you're dealing with multiple customers, you may be on site at a particular customer, but you want to get notifications when something goes down, even while you're away from your desk. That mobile app becomes very handy for that. So that's really the three parts to Domotz. It's that cloud-based service, the network agent, and then the application that all work simultaneously and in concert with one another. This view that you see on the NOC, as I said, is a very multi-tenant view. So you can have tens, hundreds, even thousands of agents all deployed onto this single dashboard. And you can see that it zooms out and scales through across the world. As you start to zoom in on particular areas, this is where you start to see how agents at individual sites are doing. You'll notice on the left-hand side, it's a list of all of your agents that you are monitoring or sites that you're monitoring, as well as information such as the number of important devices that are in there, whether some of these devices are online or offline, and then flags as if there's any security issues that may be there. When we click on a dot or we go into a particular agent, we really get away from that NOC view, that multi-tenant view, and we start looking directly into the agent itself and what's going on in this site. So let's talk a little bit about how, when you first deploy an agent, what happens here. When an agent is put on site and you activate that agent, the very first thing that it does is it starts to do a layer 2 scan of the network that it's on. We are essentially looking or sending out ARP requests and looking for all of the different MAC addresses that come back towards that agent, essentially saying, hey, I'm here. What we get is this really long list of, or depending on the size of the network, this list of devices that are on the network, Of course, at that time that you deploy it, it will be all of the devices that are online at that point. We continuously scan the network as long as that agent is active for changes in that network. So the way in which we start to enrich the information is by leveraging our sister company. Some of you may be familiar with a company called Fing. Fing is really a mobile network analyzer. Domotz acquired Fing back in 2016 because of the vast database of over 30 billion devices that we can now catalog. We can take a single MAC address and not only provide you what the manufacturer is, but we go as far as providing you the make, the model, and even the type of the device. So we're essentially classifying that device for you. You can see some of that information just if we pick a particular device here. So you can see where we take the MAC address, we can provide you with the IP address. We even go as far as starting to discover some of the application layer information, so things that are higher up in that OSI networking model. This is all very powerful for you as network engineers or as technicians to be able to see what's going on and what these devices are. It really is to allow you to enrich the information and classify a lot of these devices. The very next thing that we do as we start to discover devices, in fact, let's just go to a particular device here. I like to look at these switches. So the next thing we'll do is we discover which ports are available on every single device for management. This is all done automatically. So when we discover devices, we start to look, our common ports like Telnet, SSH, web ports, secure web ports, RDP, are those things available on these particular devices? So that you, again, as a service provider, if you need to remotely connect or you need to connect to these devices to configure and manage them, we make that available to you. One of the things, in fact, just as a tip, I want to point out here that while we're in this devices view, I want to point something out. A lot of people don't realize this, but within the desktop app, we actually can export this device list. So everything that we discover, we can export it to an Excel file. So let's just take and save this off to the desktop here. Let me minimize this real quick so we can see what's going on. This is a file that I opened up previously, but it essentially gives you this nice list of all the devices that are on that network. The thing that's nice about working with this in Excel is now I can go in and input information such as its location, its zone. I can update the importance level of all these devices. In fact, I can even take and create notes inside here, and then I can re-import that information back into the Domotz dashboard. This is a great way to optimize your setup and configurations when you first set up Domotz or when you're starting to do network scanning of a particular site. So just as a tidbit, let me blow this back up so everybody can see it. So once we have discovered all of the devices, we've started to discover all the ports that are available to the devices, we start to take it a step further. We start looking for network infrastructure devices, and this is where it gets really cool. Once we discover that we have managed switches and wireless access points that are on the system, we start to look at how each and every single device is connected to that network. And we ultimately build out a network topology map on this. In fact, if I expand all of this, you can see this lab that we have is quite extensive here. We can go as far as looking at wireless access points and understanding which devices are connected to which clients. We can look at, in this case with this access point, we can even see that this wireless access point is actually connected to port 7 of this particular switch here. So we really start to map out all of these details for you automatically. Of course, we're using standard RFC protocols when available. When it comes to wireless access points for companies like Cisco Meraki and Ubiquiti and Ruckus, we've taken and developed drivers that give us a lot more information about the wireless access points. But when it comes to any sort of PoE device on a network switch, we show you information like power being consumed. So this particular wireless access point is consuming 4 watts. We can even go and look at the average bandwidth through this as made available by the network switch. We can see what its current bandwidth is, what it's configured to do, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, for wired devices, you hope you're not seeing any sort of errors or discarded packets, but we track that information as perceived by the switch as well. When it comes to wireless access points, and this is where I think it starts to get pretty cool, we can show you information about the system itself, making sure that its memory consumption, CPU utilization, et cetera, is working as you expect. You can imagine that in office environments where you may have tens if not hundreds of endpoints that are wirelessly connected to access points, CPU utilization and memory consumption can be a concern. You want to watch that so that way you can, if you need to add secondary access points or more access points to alleviate some of that, you can be aware of it. One of the things we do is, as I mentioned, we can show every single endpoint that is connected to those access points. In fact, we can show it by which SSIDs they're connected to, which radios they're connected to, and we can even go as far, let's take this ring endpoint, we can even show things like signal strength. So what is the received signal strength by that device or of that device at the wireless access point? So these are some of the cool features that we do integration-wise with these devices. And while I'm talking about this subject, I want to talk a little bit about network diagnostics. So one of the things that we do by building out that network map is give you an idea of how all of the devices in the system are connected. And then looking at the wireless access points, we can see how wireless devices may be roaming throughout a system or understanding what networks they're connected on, looking for trouble. Well, along with the port bandwidth diagnostics, we can do what's called round trip delay testing, or think of it as pinging. So the Domotz agent itself can actively look at every single device that's on the network and understand what its round trip delay is. This is really beneficial when it comes to sensitive devices, ones that may be audio related, whether it's things like voice over IP or unified communication systems. This may be an issue when it comes to video conferencing systems, if there's not enough buffering or enough data allocated. Really what you're looking for with these types of graphs are deviations in the system. So if all of a sudden you see the average latency moving up in time, you likely know that there's a problem within the network switch itself, or in the device, or possibly in the wireless network that may be there. This one's varying quite a bit because it is a wireless device. As you can see, it's a Ring Pro camera that's probably on the edge of a network. But one of the things you guys can do, and it's going to be really, I talk about it here a little bit later, but you guys can set alerts on every single system that's out there and look for things like, is the median latency changing over time? Am I getting a certain amount of packet loss, and how can I generate alerts or awareness to that? In fact, if you are actively debugging a system, you can even issue a ping now, and what it does will actually buffer up for 30 seconds and show you an active trace of what's going on. So those are some pretty cool features that we have with respect to Domotz and doing some diagnostics. Just to go back, if I look at these switches that are here, just to show this again, you can see from an interfaces perspective, so every single device that's on the network, just like we have the network map, we can show you a list of all these devices as well, how they're connected, and what the typical throughput is for this type of switch, or this type of camera on this port, I should say, for this switch. Okay, so now that you see that we have discovered all these devices, we've built out this network topology map by interrogating the switches and the network infrastructure devices. I mentioned before that as we've discovered devices, we start to understand all of the ports that are open to those devices. So let's go and let's pick a particular device. I think these Marantz devices may be interesting. So this is just an standard audio video receiver. We have the connection tab that you can see here. You can see that we have various ports that we've discovered that are enabled because we have a specific driver for this device. We can open this thing up. What I can say is that I can create a secure connection. Now, what's happening here with this is the Domotz agent has made a request to the cloud to create a secure connection that allows my application to open this up. What I will do, and it just opened up in a browser. So let me get this browser to share on this particular page. The joys of, let's do this. There we go. So here you can see that the Domotz agent created a secure URL up here that is only known by my laptop, and it's only my laptop at my IP address that can make this connection to our Domotz cloud. And then that is making a secure connection down into this audio video receiver through the network agent. I now can go in and configure whatever I needed to do on this particular device. This works equally well, and probably more important for many of you. If I go to, say, a network switch, if I wanted to adjust some of the configurations there, I can do that as well. So here again, you can see I'm creating another secure URL between my laptop and the Domotz agent, and I need to make sure that I remember my password. So here you can see now I'm actually in the web switches, or the switches web page. So now I can go in and adjust things if I wanted to look at VLANs, change those types of things. This is a very beneficial, secure way to remotely connect into systems without dealing with common username and passwords on VPNs and whatnot. Speaking of VPNs, there are times when a single connection to a particular device is not exactly what you want. In some cases, it's actually very valuable to create a pure VPN connection. The idea behind that, and I know I'm preaching to the choir about the value of a VPN, but just to reiterate this, a VPN will essentially place your laptop, your PC directly onto that network and virtually. The idea behind it is that your laptop fundamentally gets an IP address, and now you can ping and do all of the things you may need to do to multiple devices on that network. Extremely useful when dealing with third-party tools for programming systems, or if you need to discover multiple devices and do firmware updates to multiple devices at one time. That's really where VPN on demand becomes so valuable. You are using a VPN client of your choice on your laptop to do this. Essentially, when you open up the tunnel, Domotz will give you a configuration file that you can then upload. It's a secure configuration file. So again, it works only on your laptop at that IP address that you're at that time. So even if you're in a Starbucks at the time, or you're on some other network, trying to keep you secure with these configuration files is exactly what we are about. So I'm not going to do this now since we're doing this webinar and things get crazy when you try to create multiple VPNs, but that is fundamentally how this works. So let me move on to one of the more, the bigger values. I certainly stated that Domotz is a monitoring tool. The idea behind monitoring is that you don't want to be looking at this dashboard 24/7. What you want to be able to do is get alerts that are important to you, so that you know exactly when systems are going down and you don't have to be watching every single system. If you're watching hundreds of networks with hundreds of devices on it, the last thing you can do is have just a single dashboard to look at. You need to take advantage of automated alerts. There are two types of alerts that Domotz has. One are broad network alerts. Networks alerts are really good for one, when the Domotz agent loses connectivity to the cloud. That can tell you that there's either, like I said before, a power outage or the ISP is down. You should be aware of that just so you know how to react to any customer calls that come in, or if you want to be proactive and call your customers to say, hey, something may be down here, I'm working on it. New device discovery is an important thing as well, and I want you guys to be aware of this. While Domotz is not a SOC or a security operations center, we do a couple of things that are very useful when it comes to cybersecurity. One is alerting you to when new devices show up on a network that should not be there. If you are monitoring a particular LAN, a VLAN for instance, something like a security LAN, you know that a security LAN, the only things that really should be on it are security cameras, possibly access control systems, an NVR. If you see things showing up on that LAN, that should be a big red flag that somebody is trying to either modify the system or is getting in there unnecessarily. It's a great place to put new device discovery alerts. Security issues, we'll talk about those in a minute, but essentially any type of perimeter scanning or ports that get opened unnecessarily, we want to alert you to that. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, as well as network performance in general. So this is how the agent, the speed at which the agent is communicating with the cloud, and looking at the ISP speeds. If those are deviating significantly, you can generate alerts on those. The second major thing that you can do from alerts is you can put an alert on every single device that is in the network itself. If you want to do, if you want to look at when a particular device goes offline, when it comes online, you can do that. In fact, if we go look at the custom reports for this, or custom alerts for this device, you can see I have email alerts generated when the device goes up or down. Heartbeat loss is an interesting one. This would be something for a critical device where you need to know that that thing is up 100% of the time. You may want to put an alert on heartbeats. Typically, up-down status is enough for most users, but the notion of a heartbeat you can generate alerts on as well. And then things like if the IP address changes. For many devices, you typically use DHCP, so you don't really care if the IP address changes, but often there are devices where you do want to have a static IP address. And if for some reason that changes, knowing that may be important to you. It could be a sign of somebody spoofing a MAC address or doing something that you wouldn't expect. You can generate alerts on that. I want to point out two other more advanced alerts that you can do. It's something that we call internally Domotz Eyes. Eyes essentially gives you visibility into the device that's on that network. For one, you can monitor what we call TCP services. So if you have a device that has a web page running on it, or if you have a PC that you have RDP, remote desktop protocol services running on that, and you need to make sure that they're always available, especially on something like a server or a web server for a web page, you can check that through these alerts. You also, and this is probably for network engineers, a more commonly used service, but it's that of SNMP and having sensors, so simple network management protocol. You can set up SNMP sensors to any device that has an SNMP server on it. All you have to do is input the proper OID into that particular device. So if we add a sensor here, you'll see that it's very simple to call out the name. You can state what it is. Maybe you're looking at CPU consumption. Maybe you're looking at ink levels in a printer or a toner cartridge. You can even set up variables like network traffic. So if the bandwidth on a particular port goes above or below a certain variable, set an alert. You can do those types of things. All you really need to do is understand what the OID is there and input that. So it's a great way to generate very custom alerts. We have a lot of people using that for temperature sensing on things like Cisco switches, looking at CPU utilization on devices as well. We also have people using TCP services on control systems, because a lot of times the network card that's in a control system, it may ping just fine, but the controller itself may be down and a web page may not be functioning properly. So you can use that as a backup or secondary alert mechanism. So these are some ideas on the types of alerts that you have. Let me speak specifically to the ways in which you can get alerts. So going back to alerts, and we'll look at the networks, you'll notice there are these things called personal alerts and shared alerts. There's two types of personal alerts that you can get. You can get an email alert, which fundamentally goes to the account that you logged in at. So here I've logged into my personal account of jbfowler@gmail.com. I don't want all of you spamming me now, please refrain from that. But you can get emails to that. You also can do push notifications to a mobile device. So this would be where your mobile device, what you've logged into on your phone with my, again, jbfowler@gmail, I'll be getting push notifications whenever one of these scenarios occur. Again, great for when you're remote. So those are the two types of standard personal alerts. Where it gets really powerful is when we start talking about things like shared alerts. Shared alerts allow us to do a few things. And let me go to the shared alerts page here so you can start to see how this functions. So on the side panel here, I've clicked on shared alerts and ticketing systems. Shared alerts are a great way to do integration into what we call contact channels, which are also ways that you can interface with PSA tools, professional services administration tools. You can interface with, I guess I'd say, web-based services like Slack or Microsoft Teams through these shared alerts. You can even interface directly into what we call web hooks. So if you want to leverage a service like Zapier or something of that nature that you can do custom alerting on, or Zapier will take a webhook and then you can take action and push it into other cloud-based systems. So those are the types of things you can do. But another thing you can do, which I think is really powerful, is add email alerts to shared emails. This becomes really useful if you have a ticketing system that we may not have direct integration with, but they have the ability to generate tickets based off of alerts. Or if you have a team that you want to see all of the alerts that come in, so something like support@yourcompany.com, you can generate and add these types of custom email addresses back into this. And then what you can do is essentially enable which alerts or events, I should say, will trigger these alerts. And then once it's enabled, you can actually go into your agents. And at that point, you can select a particular device. Maybe I want to look at this BlueJeans server here, and then I can go generate a shared alert that if that server goes down, I want to push that to Teams and the Datto Autotask ticketing system. This is just an example that you can have. So this becomes a very, very useful tool with respect to the power that you guys can take advantage of with these shared alerts, and we find that to be very advantageous. So that's enough about just general alerts. Let me talk a little bit about security. I mentioned it earlier. I just want to iterate this again. I don't look at Domotz as a security operations center. By all means, if cybersecurity and security is important to you, there are many tools for you. You have to take advantage of firewalls. You have to take advantage of even SOC services or security operations center tools specific. But one of the things that we can do is from the Domotz cloud, we can actually look back into the agent or the network that agent is on, and at the WAN IP address that's been given to that router or that firewall that's there, we can start to look at which ports are potentially open to that network. This is very important if you are dealing with devices that maybe shouldn't have ports open, or maybe you know of devices or ports that should be open for certain reasons. When we discover that there's a port that is open, we will alert you to it. We'll put it in this list here. Fortunately, this particular lab doesn't have any ports open, but if it did, we would see that we recognize a particular port. You can then either accept or reject it. If you accept it, every time we scan, we'll just ignore that port. We'll just list it as when the last scan was. But if you reject it, the assumption is that you're going in, fixing the problem at the firewall or the router level, and then you are going about your business. The next time we do a scan, if we see it again, we're going to alert you again. In the same vein, but from the inside out, we do what we call UPnP port forwarding. Now, I will say this, it's generally a good policy to not enable UPnP on systems. UPnP is a fairly legacy technologies. Most professional routers, firewalls, UPnP will be disabled. But in some situations where you may be using an ISP modem router combination for your clients, if it's a smaller business, they may have UPnP enabled. Any sort of device that maybe has some sort of it's a malintent or bad intent, the first thing that it will usually try to get a port open to the outside world is UPnP. So we are looking for that. In fact, we have a particular example here in these agents that I'm looking at, where you can see there were 37 UPnP ports that were opened on this particular system. We essentially flag it. We say which port was publicly open, which IP address, what it was doing, was it doing UDP or not, and we show that to you, an alert. Again, if UPnP is necessary for your system, you can accept these ports as being open and call it good, or you can reject it, go fix the problem, and then go about your business. The next time we scan it, if we see it again, we will let you know on that. So that's really where we are from a network security perspective. You probably noticed under my particular lab here that we've got this default passwords monitoring that we're doing as well. This is something that's in beta right now. We are continuing to focus on how we can do this in a proper way without disrupting the network, but we're getting close to this. We think if we can discover a device and then alert you if the common username and passwords or default usernames and passwords are being used, that makes your system that much stronger and more robust from a cybersecurity perspective. The last thing we want to have is you to have a port that is open to a device that is using default usernames and passwords. That would be a very bad thing. So let's look at reporting. One of the things that a lot of integrators and managed service providers need to do is actually have audit trails, or to be able to, if they are audited, to be able to show what it is that they've done. Domotz, as a service, will go in and log every single access that you or your team members are making to devices on a network. Now, because of the security protocols that we use, we do not see what it is you are doing to a particular device. We will track if you power cycle it, we will track if you access it, but if you get in, for instance, you can see here, even when I was doing this demonstration to the Marantz and to this Luxel switch here, you can see that I access their web portals, but we don't see what changes that I made or any configuration. But we do log who it was that made that. We log the time, we log the date that those accesses were made. So that way, if anything does happen or anything went wrong in the system, you at least have some sort of history as to who made that access and what they did. So this, we think, is a very powerful tool, especially when it comes to the need for having controls in place in case things are audited. It not only protects you, but it protects your clients as well. We also have the ability to generate reports. These reports are primarily, think of them as client-facing reports. What you have the ability to do here is add email recipients to these reports. This essentially is creating a 30-day report. So we'll take the last 30 days of history, but you can grab things like agent info and its current status, what activities happened, meaning who logged into what. You can see things like the speed test. You can even then sort by important devices, whether they're in specific rooms. If you wanted to look at things specifically, like let's say these security cameras, if you wanted to just generate a report on all the security cameras that are in there, you can do that and send that to your customer. We're going to talk about some of the specific integrations that we have here that become of value, where something like doing a report on security cameras becomes very interesting. I already showed you how you can import and export the devices list and all the information associated with each device. You also, through this login and reports tab or tile that we have in our interface, you can generate that type of report directly to a CSV file. This one, of course, it's not importable because of the way we have it, but it's another way in which you can extract information about the devices, show their latest changes when they last went online or offline in a little bit more detailed level than what you get from this standard reports tab. So that's some of the details about reporting. I want to talk a little bit about how Domotz differentiates itself from other RMM tools that are in the IoT space as we are. The first thing that I want to talk about are security cameras. So security is a very important part, not only the cybersecurity aspect, but we're finding that a lot of businesses nowadays, especially with so much online transactions that are going on, they have to go through many different levels of compliance. often, whether it's a CISPR or a SOC type compliance, there's a level of physical security that is important to the industry. There's also the notion of access control systems. Domotz does a really good job of making sure that those types of systems are online. But what's even more powerful is not only can we tell you that a particular camera is online, but we can start to give you more information like what are the streaming profiles coming from this camera. We can even grab a snapshot from this camera. So what it's doing right now is the Domotz agent basically took advantage of the OnViv protocols that are being streamed out by these security cameras, and we grabbed a snapshot, an image. Why is this important? Well, to know that a camera is online is one thing, but to know that it's functioning properly, pointed in the direction that you want, that's another thing and a much more powerful thing. Being able to see that this camera is actually streaming video as we expect is a very important feature. In fact, you can go as far as actually grabbing the streaming video itself all over our secure connection. This is not a high resolution image by any means, but you can see that it is a live image and that camera is indeed streaming right then and there. So this is a very powerful tool. In industries that are heavily regulated, that require cameras to be on 24/7, this is an added value and service that you as a service provider can take advantage of with your clients. So I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of what we're doing with security cameras here. By the way, in the instance that you get an alert where a camera went down or went offline, one of the things that you can very easily do through Domotz is power cycle this camera right here at this page, right? Being able to turn this thing off if you wanted to and reboot it effectively from the Domotz interface. When it comes to regulated markets where cameras are important, downtime is a bad thing. So making sure you fix that problem as quickly as possible. It's about that proactive monitoring, and it's about that quick resolution to time, right? Making you guys more efficient. So that's some of the things that I wanted to mention there. Another thing that I wanted to talk about in a slightly different industry has to do with really the commercial AV market. So you'll notice that we have a lot of commercial AV brands that are partners of ours. We have Samsung, you'll see LG systems that are out there. But when we come to video distribution systems, so systems like Liberty AV, Wirestorm here is one that we have in this particular lab. These are things where they're network-based. They are encoding video from a source. Maybe it's a digital signage application. They're transmitting video over a large network to a display where there's a decoder. Well, some of the integrations that we've done, and we think this is fairly powerful, especially if you're servicing things like sports bars or gymnasiums or places where there's a lot of video. We can not only tell you that those individual encoders and decoders are online, but we can show you things like the encoder is communicating or pushing video directly to these decoders over the network. This again becomes a value added service that you can do with your clients, especially if they're in the retail space or if they're in, like I said, gymnasiums, sports bars, anywhere where there's a large number of, let's call it signage or displays and sources of video. This becomes a very powerful tool. So it's something that I wanted to bring to your attention here. The other thing that it's important, and a lot of managed service providers may not do this, but we do know that a lot of integrators, especially a lot of audio video integrators, guys that are doing automation systems for businesses or doing unified communication systems or even residential applications, they will utilize what's called PDUs or power distribution units. So in this particular system, we've got several different PDUs. In fact, let's go look for the Surge X system. So what we can do is basically connect any device on that network. So do we have an open outlet? So if indeed we had an outlet here and I wanted to say, I don't know what Rebel 3 is, not that you would connect a mobile device to this, but if I wanted to connect this Rebel 3 to outlet 7, if it was physically connected to that outlet, I can now power cycle that device. I could power cycle this Apple TV if it went into a trouble state. I could power cycle this projector here through these. In fact, even if I do a quick search, let's go find that Rebel 3 thing that I just added. Rebel 3. So again, assuming that this was physically connected to that, you'll see that it automatically shows up as being connected to this Access Elite outlet number 7, and I can power cycle it directly from this page. All of that is being managed through Domotz. All you have to do is do that connection. So controlling PDUs is something that's very powerful within Domotz. Often, and you know, as an engineer, I typically don't like to see people just power cycling things randomly, but in cases where you need to get a customer or one of your clients up and running quickly, often the first thing that we try, especially remotely, is to power cycle the system to see if it comes back online. We all know that 80% or 90% of the time that fixes it, which is good. It's part of the reason that we give you the capability to do that through PDUs and through all of these managed switches that are out there. So I've taken up about 45 minutes of time. I want to ask, first of all, I want to ask Giancarlo. I think you've been looking at the Q&A section. I want to know if, based on what we talked about already, if there are any questions that came up that maybe we should address. But then, Giancarlo, I also want to give you some time to talk about a few of the items that we are working on that I think are pretty darn cool.
Oh yeah.
Where are we from a questions perspective?
Thanks a lot, JB. Unfortunately, we had a lot of questions. I'm pretty sure we answered all of them. If not, we will answer in the next few minutes or soon after the call. I wanted to highlight some of them, especially one which apparently has been asked 4 times today by James, David, Emmett, and Alex. They were wondering about VLANs and how good we do monitor across VLANs. In particular, they were asking how. I mean, first of all, if we do, how we do. So the answer to, yeah, do you want to answer to that one?
No, go ahead.
So the straight answer is yes, we do monitor across VLAN. And then to go further, we allow users to configure VLAN on the Domotz box in an easy way, because the VLAN requires a low-level configuration of the Ethernet interfaces on the device itself. Since we own the Domotz box, we allow the configuration of VLANs on the Domotz box through the web interface. However, if you have a Domotz agent hosted on your own virtual machine, on a Raspberry Pi, or a NAS drive, or a Windows server, whatever, you can configure VLAN at the device itself level, and Domotz agent will automatically recognize the interface, network interface, and start scanning that network. Worth to mention that the device hosting the Domotz agent need to be connected to a port of the switch where we have managed network and VLANs on trunk mode. That was the first question. Before going to the next, what's coming next? Let me bring up. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you mind if I make a comment about VLANs?
Oh yeah.
I think, yeah, what you said obviously is exactly right, being able to configure it. I do want to point out that under the devices page of the agent, there's the instructions on how to configure a VLAN through the agent. But then I also want to point out, you know, VLANs, it's important to make sure that a VLAN will only work if the managed switch is providing the VLAN tags to the agent. So the network switch also has to be configured appropriately. And we provide some of that information on our website and through our knowledge base. I do want to point out that VLANs are a very layer 2 specific technology when it comes to networking. You also can do through Domotz what we call private subnet scans or subnet scanning at a layer 3 level, which is essentially looking at IP addresses. So that becomes important if you're dealing with things like point of sale systems or other networks where you don't want to scan the network at a layer 2 level, looking for ports and looking for all the information, but you have static IP addresses at known locations. So I just wanted to add to that. But go ahead with your next point.
No, that's the very good thing, JB, to underline that. Jeff was asking another question about you showed, JB, the specific driver or what we got out of some access point like Ubiquiti, like Cisco Meraki, like the Ruckus access point. So Jeff was asking if we do support in the same way also Fortinet access point when they are managed through the FortiGate firewall. The answer is no, we do not yet do that, but we will. We are happy to extend the support of access point to other brands. Worth to mention that when we say we do support Ruckus or Cisco Meraki or Ubiquiti access point, well, the intent is that we do support that for those additional information that we can extract from the access point itself. But it doesn't mean that we do not support the rest. As a matter of fact, we scan also the other devices and we report the status of the access point itself.
Well, Giancarlo, can I add to this? I do want to point out that we at Domotz really care about your feedback. I said that at the very beginning that we wanted to have feedback even on this webinar, but I also want to get your feedback on the types of integrations that we should be doing, right? Who should we be working with? What are the systems that we should be creating drivers for? What are the tools that we should be integrating with? Those are things that we need to hear from you about. So please email support@domotz.com and let us know what we should be doing.
That's a very good and valid point, JB. And this brings me to the next question. This comes from David. So David, so the integration we have done with the OnVIF security camera, and he was wondering if there is a similar integration we can do with audio devices. And to that point, I told David, I saw the answer on David that there is not at the moment there is not a standard like OnVIF for the audio, apart from the ODNet Dante protocol. Do you want to add something about that, JB?
I do. So Dante is something that we think is a very powerful protocol that Audinate created, and we are definitely talking to our friends at Audinate to see how we can do that. This is much more applicable in the commercial AV space or professional integrator space, but we think that that is a very powerful integration. The beauty of what Dante has is their ability to stream audio so well and have everything be synchronized. We think that there are ways in which we, just like we did with OnVIV, could take advantage of understanding more details about the Dante-based device and showing that information in our UI. So that, I will say, it's on our roadmap. It is, we're trying to work on some of these more PSA tool integrations right now, because we think that some of that is very powerful and important to service providers. But I can tell you that Dante is on my, not only on my mind, but it's on our roadmap.
That's perfect. So speaking about the integration, the PSA, there's a question about which kind of integration we have developed so far and what is on our roadmap for the future.
Yeah. Can I show, Giancarlo, do you mind if I bring up the one slide? A couple of things that we have. So let me close this down. It's taking up my full screen. These are, I think this is the first screenshot I want to show. Let me bring this up. Let me see if I can scale it a little bit better. So Giancarlo, can you see that okay?
I can see that, yeah.
Okay. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so this is so to answer the previous question is just specifically for the PSA, we have so far a PSA in ticketing system. So far we have developed a driver to integrate with Zendesk and Datto PSA or the Autotask PSA. We have almost completed the work with ConnectWise as well for the managed part, and we will do soon other integration with Solution 360, which is another tool for also used for ticketing, and then Freshdesk, Freshservice, and other on the roadmap. However, we are also working on something completely different. It's not related to PSA, but other integration we are doing. We are basically creating a sort of configuration management and versioning for network devices. We have started with the Cisco iOS devices, and soon, in a couple of weeks, we will also have the SG series. And what we basically do once we realize that there is a Cisco iOS, like the Catalyst C2960 in this example, on the network, we try to connect to the device, and we allow the integrator or the MSP to configure an account to read data out of the Cisco device, read the configuration files, and we start historically keep track of this configuration file, and we highlight if there is anything different in the last snapshot, or if there is in the last snapshot, if there is a misalignment between what is running in the system and what it is stored as a startup. We can highlight those differences, and we can show, as JP is showing now, can highlight what is the difference in the configuration file, and which we will also allow the user to restore a previous configuration.
So
on top of that, yeah, so go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was so excited to show that we are going down this path that I completely missed the original question about the PSA tool and the integration. That's why I wanted to show this. But
no problem.
I think for managed service providers, for integrators, being able to get an alert when there's a difference between your running config and your startup configuration is extremely powerful. I'm sure that every single one of you have configured a managed switch, forgot to save it to the startup config. There was a power cycle and the whole network went crazy. This is just a very powerful tool to eliminate that right there. But then if anything ever changes, I mean, getting back to talking about things you should do from a security perspective. I mean, making sure that your configurations inside your network infrastructure devices are fixed and not changing is one of the first things you need to do to make sure that there aren't holes being plugged into your network. So I'm just really excited about this. I'm glad that this is already working with the Cisco iOS devices. You know, we've got it coming on a lot of the other managed switches. We're just proving this out right now with the Cisco stuff.
Yeah, thanks JB for bringing this. So one last question, and then we go to what's next really on our roadmap. So multiple attendees actually have asked about possibility to write their own scripts or their own portal to extract the same kind of information that we do from the Domotz web app or the Domotz app. So yeah, so the idea is that basically whatever you see and whatever JB has shown through the web app or through the desktop app is basically based on a full set of RESTful API. These RESTful API are available to every single Domotz user. So you as a Domotz user can write your simple, I don't know, JavaScript or Python script to extract the same information using the API that JB is showing, or even create your own portal and give access to your customer to that portal on a subset of information that you want to show to them. So we have multiple use cases like that, scripts for extracting the status of specific devices every single morning, or portal to give access to customer that shows a security camera stream on a map, for instance, or other example like that. So be sure that everything is there and you can use that. But on top of that, there is a correlated activity that we are carrying on. Because another customer was asking, how do I make sure that I have my own devices that I want to integrate to? I know how they work. I want to extract some information from those devices, and I know how to extract those information. And this is a different topic. In our let's say dictionary, we call that custom plugin or custom drivers. So very soon, in around a couple of months, we will be able to release a functionality which allows you to write your own code to extract information out of devices that you are familiar with, and put those information in the Domotz cloud and retrieve through the public API as shown before.
Well, then Giancarlo, that, I mean, today, if a device uses SNMP, has an SNMP server on it, often you can write OIDs and you can generate alerts on that. But now what you're saying is you'll be able to create a driver based on things like RESTful APIs into that device. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is accurate. Yeah, you can use the RESTful API, you can use a telnet connection, SSH connection, you can use TCP and raw data analysis. Absolutely. Yeah, that's accurate, GB.
That's exciting. Well, Giancarlo, we only have about a minute left here.
Yeah.
Any other specific things you maybe wanted to say that the team is working on that we're excited about? Like
yes. Okay. Let me. You mentioned something important, which is the reports. No, you can generate a monthly report, and today you need to generate that manually. I mean, you press a button and you receive an email with the last 30 days of activities, and in that 30 days you can insert notes, you can insert all the custom things that JP was showing. Important is in 2 weeks time we will be able to allow you to automatically generate the report for you every single first of the month. So every single first of the month you can generate the report automatically, you receive in your email. Or I mean, in our roadmap there will be also the possibility to store in the cloud, but at least you will receive automatically in the email. This is coming soon, and in 1 month time, one very big change in our say dashboard is the possibility to search devices cross agents, so cross sites. So for instance, if you want to analyze which Cisco iOS devices you have across all your hundreds of agents, there will be a search button to search for those Cisco iOS devices, and more importantly, a multi-select function that allows you to configure them all in once. By configuring, I mean setting the community string for SNMP, or setting alerts on them, or even setting OED monitoring for SNMP monitoring. And also the other possibility to export the settings for one specific device and import back to all of them, which makes the life of the integrator much easier. It's a productivity feature, basically. Those are really in our roadmap to be released in 1.5 months, I would say.
Yeah, that's going to be a very powerful tool there, Giancarlo, when people can easily search across multiple agents for devices. So that's exciting. Good. Well, Giancarlo, we're at our 1 hour. I hope we got to everybody's questions. I know that we'll still have a few that we'll answer here, but thank you very much for your time, everybody. I do want to say stay safe, right? Stay COVID free, okay? And let us know how we can help you. I invite you guys that if you have questions, more detailed questions about Domotz, please send a message to support@domotz.com. You're also welcome to use the chat feature on our website to get direct access to our support team. If you have specific questions regarding opportunities when it comes to sales and dealing with large opportunities or sites, by all means, you can email our sales team. So sales@domotz.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.